In this activity, we're going to go ahead and make our own Time magazine cover. Time magazine is probably one of the most iconic magazines of all time. As you can see here where I went the Time archive vault, there are certain elements, or there's kind of a consistent theme that tells people that this is indeed a Time magazine cover. Although not every element is same from a month or issue to issue, there are some common elements. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this cover. And typically it's going to have a red border. I'm not sure that I've seen one that doesn't have it, although I think it's safe to say 99% of the time it is going to have a red border. Then there's going to be a small amount of white stroke that we'll go ahead and add. And then there's the word time itself, which is, as far as I know, always in the same font. Most of the time it's red, but in this particular case it happens to be white. Sometimes it's transparent. Sometimes it's behind the subject, like it is here. Sometimes it's in front of the subject. Other than that, other than some small details like the date right up here and maybe some little bit of text down here, the Time magazine covers are relatively consistent. And it's such a powerful brand that when you look at a Time magazine cover, you almost instantly know, even if you've never read Time magazine, that this is a Time magazine cover. So let's go ahead and get started in creating our own Time magazine cover. For our Time magazine cover, we're going to go ahead and use GIMP, which is just a free, awesome version of Photoshop. I don't know why anybody would pay any money for Photoshop. We're going to go ahead and make a new image, and I'm going to make it letter size paper, which is 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. So I can go ahead and change my units to inches and put in 8.5 by 11, but a quicker way to do it is just to choose US letter. And when I click OK, there's our image. The next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is open up one of my copies that I went ahead and grabbed of a Time magazine cover. And the reason I'm going to do this is that it makes it easy to have a reference, and I can go in and sample colors, which we'll be doing in just a moment. So the first thing I want to do is make this border, and so I'll go back to my original image and grab a rectangle like so, and that looks pretty good. Under selection, choose invert, and then grab my paint bucket tool and come into here and use my eyedropper to grab this particular color of red. And now when I come in here with my paint bucket tool, there's my red border. The next thing that I want to do is go ahead and put in this white border right here. And there's a number of ways that I can go ahead and do it. So I'm going to just go ahead and do a slightly different way, which could also be used to have made this red border along here if that's what you wanted to do. So I want to go ahead and select this area right in here, this white area. So I'm just going to use my fuzzy select tool and just click in here, and you can see that I now have these marching ants going around the outside. And what I've selected is probably this red area right here. Let's find out by just trying to erase. Well, that's not working. So let's go ahead and assume that we've got this inside area here, but as I erase, nothing happens. And the reason why is because by default the background is white. So what I want to do is come up into my layer and add what's called an alpha channel. And what an alpha channel adds is transparency. So with that alpha channel now added, it doesn't look like anything happened, but now I can come in and do some erasing. But I don't want to do that yet. What I want to do, since I've got all of this area inside here selected, is I want to come up to my select tool and I want to shrink my selection. So right now my selection set, the marching ants are between the red and the white, if you will. So when I click shrink, a measurement comes up, and because I've been doing just a little bit of practicing, I want to do about 5/100ths of an inch. So I'll just go ahead and click OK. You can see here where my marching ants are now on this inside. So what I want to do is I want to just go ahead and erase this inside here. And I can make my brush bigger by using the brackets key on my keyboard. But that works for me. And so now that I've got my red border and my small white border or stroke, I'm going to go ahead and double click on this and change the name to frame. Make it whatever you want. And then I'm going to come down here and create a new layer. And let's see, let's just go ahead and call that one, we'll call it main. Click OK, and now anything that I work with in the main layer is going to show up in this interior area. Our next step is to go ahead and insert yourself or whoever you want to put in there. I'm not going to use myself. I hope you do, but because it's just a little more interesting, a little more fun, but I'm just going to use something different. So first thing I'm going to do is make a new layer, and I'm going to call it myself. Call it whatever you want, but just name it something that you'll be able to recognize. And layer fill type, transparency is good at this point. So with the myself layer selected, you can just go ahead and cut and paste your image in here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up my image of myself separately so that I can work on it. By the way, I've switched to GIMP 2.10. I was using 2.8, but a couple of things were just a little bit buggy, so I opened this one. Steps are exactly the same. The interface looks a little bit different. It's maybe a little bit more polished. It's really the first major upgrade they've had in a long time. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go File, Open. And this is the person that I'm going to insert into my Time magazine cover. Now, I could just take and select all of this, copy and paste it into my frame here in the myself layer, but I want to clean it up first. I don't like the purple background. I don't want the logos. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is use our fuzzy select tool, and we'll just come in here, and right now the setting is all the way up to 248. And see, that just selects the entire image. If we turn it all the way down to almost nothing, when we select and hold down the shift key so that we can add pixels, you can see it's not super clean. And so somewhere between those two there's a balance. So let's just go ahead and click in the middle. I've got it set to 129. I'll just click outside here to deselect everything, or you can come up to select and choose none. But I'll come in here and just click, just maybe right there. And that looks pretty good. As I go around, I can see my marching ants clearly have the family guy defined. So I'm just going to hold down the shift key and kind of get this dark purplish area. Oh, now it jumped over, didn't it? So let's go ahead and turn down the threshold a little bit. Every image is going to be different. Let's reselect. And it looks pretty good, although it's kind of muddled up here by his hair. So I'll click one more time. And that's great right there. So I've selected the pixels outside of here. You can see that includes the word Fox, but does not include the words Family Guy. So let's see, let's make sure I have my alpha channel. I don't, so let's go ahead and add an alpha channel. Actually, it's not. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of erasing here. My eraser is extremely small. It would take me forever to do all that erasing. So let's go ahead and just bump the size up, and the hardness is set to 100, which is good. As I'm erasing, you can see that there's a white or a red background, and that's because here's our background color right up here. If I change it to white or whatever, it'll be white, but we don't want anything there. We want just pixels. So I'm going to add the alpha channel, and now when I erase, I get that checkerboard pattern. And I don't have to be too careful because the family guy is not selected. He is excluded from the marching ants, so as I move my eraser across his head, see, it doesn't get him, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, so now how do I get rid of this Family Guy logo? Well, a couple ways I could do it. I could reselect it, or I can come up to select and invert my selection set. So now this text is selected. You have to be careful because the Family Guy is also selected. So see, if I click there, I can erase them, but I don't want to do that. So I'll come up and select none, and then I'll go ahead and save my image. And let's see, yeah, I'll just keep it, well, actually I'll name it Family Guy Edit, or Edited, just in case I want to go back. And I'll create save, or click on save. And I've now got this image that I can go ahead and insert, which is what we'll go ahead and do next. Now there's lots of ways that you can go ahead and insert yourself into your Time magazine cover, but since I've gone to the trouble of going ahead and erasing everything except for myself or my subject here, I can just go Command A, or I can come up here and select all, and that goes ahead and you see a little, maybe you can't see these little marching ants around here, and then I'm just going to do what you'd probably expect. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come back into my frame. I'm going to go ahead, oops, looks like I must have deleted my layer there, so let's go ahead and there it is, myself. We'll click OK, and then we'll make sure we add an alpha channel. Oops, looks like it's already there. And so now I can come up and edit and paste, and there I am. Now up here we've got a floating selection, and we can just go ahead and anchor that into the myself layer. Now we need to scale him up a little bit, and we're going to use a couple tools to do that. First of all, we can click on the move tool up here, and we can move him down just a little bit so he's just a little bit below the frame. And then we can click on the scale tool, and when we click on him we get this kind of like grid with these different grips. I'm going to hold down the shift key, so when I scale him, it scales him proportionally, and that's probably not too bad right there. This middle button allows me to move at the same time, so you can get it just the way you want it, and then just go ahead and click scale, and there it is. Now he is overlapping the outside of the frame, and you'll see that in Time magazine covers from time to time, but for mine I want Family Guy or myself completely inside. So now I'm going to take this layer and just manually hold on it with the left mouse button, click it down, and watch what happens when I release it. It moves the layer down to the bottom, and so now the frame is on top. So at this point I highly recommend you go ahead and save it. I'm going to save this as 3 space Time cover with FG Family Guy. Again, just make it something that you want, and next we'll go ahead and continue to embellish this, but we're making really good progress. Next I'm going to go ahead and add the title, the word time, and it's a pretty iconic font that they use. Matter of fact, I have been unable to find a Time magazine font. So here's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to come in here to this web version where I've got quite a bit of contrast between the black and the white. And then I'm going to save this image. And let's see, I'm just going to call it time. Doesn't really matter what you call it as long as you can find it. Then we'll come back into GIMP, and open up the time image, and then I'm going to use my fuzzy select tool to grab this black text here, hold down the shift key, grab this, this, and this, and I'll go ahead and just copy it to my clipboard right now. Now I'll come back into my cover. There it is right there. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to just call it time. And I'm going to want to go ahead and fill it with transparency. Not the foreground color, which would be blue, or the background color, which would be black, but transparency. That adds an alpha channel for us. So there's my time layer. So let's go ahead and just go Command V or paste and see what we get. And there it is. Now it's pretty small. So let's go ahead and do what we did before. Let's try to scale it up. Or first of all, let's turn off this background layer so I can see what I have. And then let's go ahead and click on scale and click on the word time. Hold down the shift key and we'll make it bigger. That looks pretty good. And so I'll just go ahead and click on scale now to scale it. And because I do not want it to be black, I am going to switch to red or whatever color you want. And then I can use the paintbrush or the paint bucket tool. I think the paintbrush would probably be the quickest. And so I'll just go ahead and hold down my left mouse button and paint that. Come up to select. Oh, let's see. Oh, I have to lock my layer over here. So I'll go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and bring our family guy back in. And the title is now over him. If you want your title behind, again, you can just drag that layer down below, and now he's in front. And once again, Time Magazine is so iconic that people's minds are just going to go ahead and fill in whatever of the titles covered up. So it's completely up to you deciding what you want to do. We're getting pretty close. It's looking pretty great. Let's go ahead and save it. So I'll make this I'll say with title. Now we want to go ahead and take and fill in this background here, this checkerboard area, because right there there's no pixels there. A quick way to do it, if you just want a solid color, is make a new layer. And we'll just call it BG for background. And we're going to fill it with the background color, which right now is blue. You can change the color any way you want. And there you go. It's just that easy. You probably want the background layer to be on the very bottom, so we'll just go ahead and drag that down. And if that's what you want, that's just fine. But I'm going to do something just a little bit different. I'm going to take and put myself in Paris, probably my most favorite city. And so I'm just going to come in, Google in here, Paris. Yep. Again, spelling helps. There we go. And I'll go to images, and then I usually like, unless there's something real specific I want, to make sure that the tools are set to large. That way I don't end up with some little thumbnail. And then I'll just, well, I'll go ahead and pick this one right here. As you can see right down here, it's 2000 by 1300 pixels wide, so that's pretty good. So I'll right click and save this image as, and put it in here, and I've already done this. So we'll go back now into GIMP, and in this layer, I'm just going to go ahead and put that layer in the trash. And then I'm going to come up here under File, and I'm going to open as a layer this image right here. and it goes ahead and it just sticks it in place. So let's go ahead now, and by the way, you'll see that it is in its own layer, so I can work with just it, and it is selected. So I'm going to turn the myself off, and let's see, also turn off time. Just turning off the visibility, I'm not deleting anything. I'm going to click on the scale tool that we've used before, click on the image, hold down the shift key so that everything shifts proportionally. And I basically want to cover up the whole checkerboard area. So just a little bit of fiddling here. Oops, grabbed it in the wrong place, so I need to undo that. Grab it right there in the middle. And let's see, let's again hold down the shift key. Scale it up about like, maybe about right there. You can come in and rescale it at any time you want. So go ahead and click scale. And there we go. And then I'll turn back on my title. And I'll turn back on myself. Now, why didn't the title show up? Well, that's because the background is on top of it. So I'm going to want to move this background down to the bottom. And there we go. Just a little bit left to do. I think it's looking awesome. Somewhere along the line here, I realized that I lost my screencast recording for how I put in this text, which reads Family Guy in Paris on the cover. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll come up here and highlight the layer just to delete it, and we'll go ahead and just start fresh. Click on the capital letter A or the text tool, and this panel over here, tool options, will open. You have your choice of all of your different system fonts, and you don't have to decide right now. You can edit any of this later on. You can change the size, you can change the color, which is typically going to be the foreground color right up here. And you have different justification options, centered, right justified, left justified, all that sort of stuff. So to go ahead and place your text, just kind of click and drag a rectangle like that, and then just click up inside and start typing. You return after each of them, and it's kind of hard to see because it's in yellow, so I'm going to select all my text by dragging through it like that. I'll go ahead and change the color to say blue. Click OK. I'll go ahead and make it bold. I can do that with this font. And then I'm just going to go ahead and increase the font size. And that's really all there is about adding it. The one important thing to note is that when you make a new layer, or excuse me, when you add text, anytime you add it, it makes its own layer up here. So you don't have to go through and place it on a new layer, which gives you control so that you can turn the visibility on and off if you want, or you can move it around. At some point, if you decide that you want to change the text, like if I want to add a space after the word Paris, you can just click on the text tool, double click, click anywhere inside. I'll go ahead and hit return, and then I'll grab this little grip so that the word Paris shows up. And let's see, and then just like anything, you can go ahead and click the move tool and position it about wherever you want. So that's text in a nutshell with GIMP. Next thing we'll do is add some stroke to the text to make it stand out a little bit better. Okay, while practicing for the next step, I realized that I had not saved my work, so I had to redo this text right down here, which reads, Family Guy in Paris. Now, part of the problem with that is that regardless of where I position it, it's pretty easy to see the words over his plain white shirt, but it gets a little busy there where the Eiffel Tower is. So I'm going to add a little bit of stroke, or a little bit of a colored boundary going around the words, so that it provides a little bit of contrast and makes it easier to see. So I'm going to come up here to my Family Guy layer. This is my text layer, and I'm going to right click, and I am going to duplicate that layer. There's also an icon right down there that'll help you do the exact same thing. So then I'm going to rename this text stroke, so I know the difference between the two. And then I am going to use my text tool. And by the way, what I essentially have is these words duplicated, so they're right on top of each other. So I'm working with the top copy now. So I'm going to go ahead and just come in here, try to select all this text. Let's see here. What did I do? Looks like I moved it a little bit. Let's see, I'm going to hit escape there, and I'm going to just come in and do it again. There we go. So with that text selected, now I'm going to come in here and just right click on it and choose to make a path from the text. So what that does is it makes a selection set. So if I come up here now and look at my paths menu, there it is. And so I can then come in and using my wand tool here, and I'll go ahead and just zoom in so you can see better. I'm going to come in and select each of these letters individually. Don't forget the I, or the dot for the I. Okay, so I think I've got it all selected, and so I've got the marching ants going around all the letters, and then under the select menu I'm going to choose to grow the selection. That is, it will offset it equally around each letter. Let's try, I'm just guessing here, let's just try 6 pixels and see what that looks like. Not bad, a little bit chunky, so let's undo that. And let's just come back in again and go to grow, and let's just pick 4 and see how that looks. There, I like that better. Now that that's selected, I can pick a color. Let's see, what color should I pick to go around it? You know, actually what I'm going to do is I am going to use the eyedropper tool here to pick the color of his pants. Okay. And so that's now my new color right here, or the current color. And then I can take the paint bucket tool or the paintbrush and just fill that all in, and then come back into the layers. The reason it covered up the blue letters with green is that this layer is on top. So if I just select it and drag it down below my other text layer, there we've got it. Now, I'm not sure that I like the green as much, so let's just go ahead and change that. Pick a different color here. Let's just try yellow. And again, with the paintbrush tool, I'll paint it. And then I must have undone moving the layer. No, oh, you know what? I was on the wrong layer. So let's go through and undo that. Undo that, undo that, and then since I moved on, I have to come down here and now paint with yellow, and there we go. And I think that probably looks pretty good. So let's go to view, view, zoom, fit image in window, and see if we like it. Let's just select out here, and I'll go to my frame. So that really helps. Now at this point, you can go ahead and put in the date above here. It's just the exact same process. You can put down the volume and issue number down here, or you can just leave them off. But there's one more thing that I want to do before we wrap this up. When you look at this cover, you'll notice that the background is blurred a little bit. And that's what happens in photography. If you set your camera to aperture value, you can focus on people in the foreground and blur the background. The lens does this, but we didn't take these pictures, so we're going to use GIMP to do that for us. So what I'm going to do is come into this layer right here and select it, and then under filters I'm going to choose a Gaussian blur. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And then I make sure you have preview checked so that you can see what's going on in real time. These two, the size of the X blur and the Y blur, are locked together over here on the right. So I'm just going to click in the middle and let's see what it does. Well, you can hardly tell what's going on in the background. So let's click again. And that's better, but I think it's still a little bit too much. I'd like to be able to see the boats in the background on the Seine River. So that really helps overall, so I'll just go ahead and click OK. And it applies the blur to just that layer. And I really think that helps over what we had before. So at this point, I'm going to call this good. And I'm going to save it as, this time, number 7, time cover finished. And of course you can come in and customize it other ways that you want. One thing that we can do here, or one thing that I'll point out, is that when I have been saving, I've been saving in an XCF format, which preserves all of my layers and all of my work and my paths and all the data within GIMP. And if I wanted to change something, this is what I'd open it up. Now, if I wanted to put this on the web or post it, in social media or what have you, it's going to need to be in the form of a JPEG. So we're going to come up to File here, and we're going to export it. And we're going to choose our file type. Let's see. There we go, JPEG. And whatever you want to name it is fine. Oop, did I choose PNG? Well, it says JPEG here. Let's see what happens. So we'll go ahead and export it. And what that's going to do, nope, it's exporting as a PNG, although that will work just fine in social media as well. So I'll just go ahead and click export. And that's going to flatten all of our layers over here into one image. And with that complete, let's just go ahead and open it up and take a look at it. And so there's my PNG. And there's my cover. But you'll see that it's all in one layer up here. So again, if you wanted to change the text or edit it, you would actually open up the XCF file within GIMP. So I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. I'm happy with the results, and hopefully your results will be just as good, if not better.